be all, everything be hunky-dory. God's going to pour his wrath out on everybody else. And that has nothing to do with it. Okay? Jesus is not coming back to pour his wrath out on everybody. Okay? And in passages that may refer to stuff like that, you have to understand, we haven't covered this, but wrath is actually a form of love. Wrath is to be against those things that harm you. So like if I love my son and he gets hit by an SUV, my wrath might be poured out against that SUV. I might kick a few of the tires, take a baseball bat to the vehicle and put some dents in it because of my wrath against what it did to my son. Its wrath is against those things that harm, things that we love. So it's a form of love. Wrath is a form of love. And it's not that I, hate SUVs. It's just that this particular one hit my son, and I, might get a little upset that it did. So when it talks about the wrath of God, we have to understand that God is coming to deal with things that harm us. That we may be harming ourselves or we might be harming others. And God's going to stand against that. That's the wrath of God. It's his love being demonstrated in a forceful way against those things that would be against us. So he goes on to say here that he shall cut him asunder, talking about when the Lord comes and dealing with this servant that doesn't prepare. He says, and shall cut him asunder and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So I'm entering into an area here that most people in the church are not going to like. In fact, they might hate it. And I've already experienced that in discussing this with other pastors and church leaders. Okay? They all respond very badly. But again, the translation is a little bit poor here. So it says, and the Lord, talking about the Lord, shall cut him asunder. Okay? It says, and shall cut himself asunder. Okay? This is not something being inflicted by God. This is something that this person has brought on himself. Okay? He's cutting himself off from what God wanted to reward him with in the millennial period. If you show yourself as worthy and trustworthy in this time frame leading up to his coming back, he knows he can trust you with his goods and what he's trying to do during the millennial period. Okay? So this is, a resume point, that, if you get it now and are preparing the way he suggests, then he knows that, you're the right guy for the job in when he's dealing with humanity as a whole and reigning on earth for 1,000 years. But if you do not prepare, you are cutting yourself off from that, and you're appointing yourself. It's not that God appoints it, but you appoint yourself your portion during the millennium period with the hypocrites. Now, hypocrite here means to live unknowingly under what you might consider judgment. Okay, that the people during the millennium period, okay, that are not religious, that are secular, don't have any interest in God or whatever the case may be, they're just living their life, right? They just completely oblivious to this. So they're living unknowingly in such a way that all of a sudden, this whole thing comes and happens, and so to them it's received as a judgment. And then it says, there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now here's the interesting thing. The whole context of this is the person who doesn't prepare. So first he's cutting himself off from this opportunity. His portion will be with those that came into this thing completely unknowing what was even going to be happening or going on. And this person is going to have much weeping and gnashing of teeth. We're talking about the servant who wasn't prepared. I'm talking to Christians who are sitting on their hands waiting for a rapture and not preparing for the return of Christ. That you are going to make your portion with those that don't realize what's coming. They have no clue. The church does, but they've got it wrong, and they're not preparing. They're preaching a pagan thing. And when it comes, you are going to be very upset. There's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. the Christians are going to be weeping and gnashing their teeth. This is the point Jesus is making here. I know that people in the church are not going to like that. But the reality is, this is what Jesus is suggesting here. So, Matthew 25, he expands on this. And he gives basically 3 examples in which to understand this last portion regarding those that don't prepare and those that do prepare. He unpacks this for us a little bit. So let me give you some pictures of that as we go forward. So starting in chapter 25, verse 1. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. And they that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels and their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us your oil, for our lamps have gone out. But the wise answered, saying, No, not so. Not going to happen. Lest there be not enough for us and you. But go rather to them that sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open up to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. So, we know from that last statement that who Jesus is talking to here. And you have the wise serpent and the unwise serpent depicted as the 10 virgins. So, specifically here, what I'm suggesting to you is that Jesus is talking to Christians. And the virgins represent Christians. 5 of them prepared for Jesus' return and 5 did not. So when it was time for the marriage supper of the Lamb, according to the Scriptures, 5 were let in and 5 were not. Now, this is one of the first reason why there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. I have suggested that the plan of God from the beginning was adoption. That others were going to be included in the Godhead relationship that existed in the uncreated spirit realm of God. God is spirit. He exists in a spirit realm, and he's uncreated, so it's an uncreated spirit realm in which God exists. Within God, he created the world, the universe, in the womb of God, in fact, and his plan is to adopt us into his life. And part of that included birthing us from created into uncreated. But it wasn't just that. It required that something was first created in the image and likeness of God, and then it had to be incarnated into by God, and then it has to transfigure and ascend. And what we're waiting for as Christians is to transfigure and ascend. This has already happened in Christ. Jesus has transfigured and ascended. We now wait our own transfiguration and ascension into the uncreated realm of God. So when Jesus comes back, the Christians will transfigure and ascend. This includes all 10 virgins in this story depicted. Those that prepared and those that didn't prepare. The difference is that those that did prepare are going to be invited to the marriage feast, the marriage supper of the Lamb. Those that did not prepare are not going to get that privilege. So we see a difference here. Where I'm not suggesting that we won't transfigure and ascend as Christians. I'm suggesting that some that do will not participate in the marriage supper, those that didn't prepare. Now, I'm open to discussion on this. But this is where, and again, I've run this by several people. This is where this seems to be heading. So, ultimately, those of the Christians that do transfigure and ascend, and those that transfigure and ascend, the requirement of this, we talked about in the previous video, in the 9th video, and I suggest you watch it because it deals with Ephesians and the gospel message. Our participation in what God has already accomplished is what's required. Okay, God's included you in himself, and all will actually transfigure and ascend into the uncreated spirit realm of God, but some will probably not choose to participate in it. Okay, that's the difference. We can either choose to participate in it, or we cannot choose to participate in it, just as you can choose to participate in this created realm or not. Now, the effects may be different. The way in which you participate may be different. We could talk hours for that. But the point being is that at some point, all will transfigure and ascend into the uncreated life of God, and they have a choice to participate in it or not. So those that have, in terms of our existence here, and say, yes, I want to be a part of that, I want to participate in that, enter into a betrothal relationship with God, where we are the bride of Christ. We become engaged to Christ. And the Holy Spirit is the earnest, or the engagement ring, in which God gives us and who indwells us without measure. All this is covered in the previous video. The point being is that some will transfigure and ascend when Jesus returns, and some will transfigure and ascend 1,000 years later. Those that transfigure and ascend when Jesus returns are going to be the Christians. Those that have, or more generally, those that have said, yes, I want to be a part of whatever God is doing. We can discuss the whole idea of exclusivity in terms of it being Christianity. I don't want to get into that right now, but we do have to be very careful in that particular view. But those views have been generally developed on the idea of man being separated from God, which is a pagan idea. So you're already off on the wrong start. So we need to go back and reevaluate some of those things. Not that they need to necessarily change, but we need to make sure that we're on good ground. So here we see this idea where the 10 virgins transfigure and ascend, essentially, is what Jesus is suggesting here. 5 of them are included in the feast, the marriage supper feast. Others are not. And those are the ones that make their bed with the hypocrites. So ultimately, during the millennial period, you're going to see some who participate in the marriage supper of the Lamb, and who God uses in terms of overseeing and helping him out with the rest of the world. In Revelation, it says we'll be a kingdom of priests. Some translators say it kingdom and priests. Okay, it will be kings and priests, but that's not correct. It's a kingdom of priests. Okay, so the role in which the Christians play during the millennial period is as priests. Okay, not in terms of the sacrificial system, but in terms of Christ's representatives. The priest was one who was there for the benefit of the people. He provided services to the people. And so that is the type of role that the church will play, those that have prepared for his return during the millennial period. Those that aren't prepared, it seems that Christ is suggesting, will not be included in that. So ultimately, the next picture he gives is of another picture of the kingdom of heaven. Okay, what happens when Christ returns and how we, participate in it, how it all, works together. He said, this is a picture of the kingdom of heaven as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and another 1, to every man according to his several ability. And straightway he took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them 5 other talents. And likewise, he that had 2, he gained also other 2. And he that received 1 went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them. And so he that had received 5 came and brought his other 5. And saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. And his Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. And so then we go through the same verses, essentially, with the person who had 2 talents. And the same result. All right, so then the one that received 1, beginning in verse 24 now, received 1 talent, came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and I went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast, that is thine. So he's returning his 1 talent that he got. His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sowed not, and gather where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury, with interest, in other words. So, put it, at least you could have put it in the bank and made a little interest on it, right, in our terminology that we would have. Take therefore the talent from him and give it to him which hath 10 talents. For unto every one that hath shall be given, for unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away, and even that which he hath will be taken away. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness, there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So here we see that phrase again. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So here's the picture we're given. Jesus has left us and gone away, okay? And he's coming back. But before he left, he gave us creation, okay? He's given us resources. And he's saying, listen, take the resources I've given you and make something out of them. Use them, okay? Jesus, people don't realize this, but, we want to criticize capitalism, okay? Capitalism is the design of the universe. Okay, we don't like American capitalism, or we don't like the greed in capitalism with companies and all that stuff. No, that's adulterated capitalism. Capitalism, in its simplest form and definition, is taking what I have, the resources I have, such as money, time, minerals, resources of other kinds, and investing them into something for a greater return. It's as simple as that. The universe has been designed to help us in that. The farmer can take one seed and put it in the ground, and it will bring forth thousands of seeds in return. You see? This is the design of the universe. Jesus is saying, listen, I've given you this, okay? I've given you resources. Invest in them. Take them. Use them, okay? Farmer, get out there and plant the seed, okay? Get the return. You can plant one amaranth seed and get maybe 2-3 billion times the return with one seed. This is phenomenal. The universe is designed to be fruitful. All we have to do